Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now we are now in the section where Krishna went very deep into bhakti. It was a very beautiful deep dive into bhakti, talking about the love of the residents of Vrindavan and of course emphasizing the special nature of the gopis of Vrindavan. So it was very beautiful, very deep. And now we have to kind of start going back up. We went very deep into bhakti. Now Krishna will start going back up and talking more philosophically about how to reach him. And this is going to start with a question that Uddhava is going to ask Krishna right now, because he's heard all this, but he's not quite, it was a bit too much. He's not quite ready for it, so he's going to ask for more information. So if you want to watch all the other classes, we already have over 50 classes of this Uddhava-gita course. Make sure you become a member of this channel. That's how you access the whole course, and the instructions are here in the description of the video, and this is a way for you to see the whole course. And you can also go to Uddhava-gita.com, where we line up, we show all the classes and what we've covered, and of course to watch the classes you have to be a member of the channel. Now we are in the 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 16. So again, this is Uddhava's turn to ask for Krishna to go deeper. Sri Uddhava said, "O Lord of all masters of mystic power, I have heard your words, but the doubt in my heart does not go away. Thus my mind is bewildered." So he's being a good disciple. He's like, I don't get it. And that's what disciples, that's the disciple's right to come up to the guru and say, look, I heard what you're saying, but I don't get it. That's what guru, disciple, that's how the relationship works. Purport. In the first verse of the 10th chapter of this canto, the Lord stated that one should take shelter of him and execute one's duties within the varnashrama system without material desire. Uddhava interpreted this statement as recommending karma mishra bhakti. So we've talked about this before. Mishra means mixed. Karma means action, like just doing stuff in the material world. Karma here. Mishra mixed with bhakti. So, you're doing your stuff, you're a regular materialist, but you have some devotion. That's what he thought Krishna was talking about. Or devotional service mixed with a tendency towards fruitive activities. It is a fact that until one understands Lord Krishna to be everything, it is not possible to retire from ordinary worldly duties. Rather, one is encouraged to offer the fruits of such work to the Lord. In verse 4 of the 10th chapter, the Lord recommended that one retire from worldly duties and systematically cultivate knowledge, accepting him as the supreme. Uddhava understood this instruction to indicate jnana mishra bhakti. So karma mishra bhakti, just regular mundane action with devotion. Jnana mishra bhakti. Jnana is the path of thinking, philosophizing, cultivating knowledge, just a philosophical approach to liberation. So when you think, and then that mishra mixed with bhakti, with devotion. Or devotional service to the Lord mixed with the secondary desire to accumulate knowledge. Beginning with verse 35 of the 10th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the process of material conditioning and liberation from material life. The Lord replied elaborately, stating that without devotional service, the process of philosophical speculation, jnana, can never be perfected. In chapter 11, verse 18, the Lord emphasized the importance of faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in verse 23, Krishna extensively widened his discussion of devotional service, of bhakti, emphasizing that one should be faithful and hear and chant the glories of the Lord. The Lord concluded that both the development and perfection of bhakti depend on association with devotees. In verse 26 of the 11th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the actual ways and means of devotional service, of bhakti, and about the symptoms of devotional perfection. And in verse 48, Lord Krishna stated that unless one takes to the process of devotional service, bhakti, one's attempt for liberation will be useless. One must associate with the devotees of the Lord and follow in their footsteps. Finally, in verse 14 of this chapter, the Lord categorically rejected the paths of fruitive activities, karma, and mental speculation, jnana. And in this verse 15, recommended that one exclusively surrender unto Him with all of one's heart. So this is a beautiful summary of what we've done so far in this course. And you can see what happened. So at first it seemed like, okay, Uddhava was like, okay, so more of like the karma, dharma thing, you just, be a good citizen, do your duties, perform your purposes. And then, no, speculation, thinking, philosophizing, think about where you are and where you come from, so that. And then bhakti, and then Krishna says, just bhakti. It's like, well, what about all the other stuff you said? So it got confusing. And this is a very common confusion people get, because the path of yoga, the path that's taught by Krishna, taught here in Bhagavad Purana and Bhagavad-gita, is a path where there is a lot of knowledge and philosophy. And there is the bhakti part, there's the rasa, there's the emotion, there's the love. And of course, love is supreme, love is the best, love is the ultimate exercise of existence, is love. And to love God is the perfection of love. So, of course, it goes that way, but all this other stuff is also necessary. It gives the basis. So it's not just a sentimental path, it's a highly philosophical path, and at the same time, it reaches the highest stages of sentiment, of love, of feeling, of rasa is the term used in Bhagavad-gita, in Bhagavad Purana. So that's what it's the two things. It's a full path. It really is a complete holistic path. So sometimes you emphasize one thing and people might think, oh, so that's not important. No, that's important as well. But we're just saying, what's the final end goal and the most powerful tool. So when we emphasize bhakti, it's not to negate the rest. The rest is there to give support to bhakti as well. Having received such elaborate and technical instructions on the perfection of life, Uddhava is bewildered, and his mind is afflicted with doubt about what he should actually do. Lord Krishna has described many procedures and the results of such procedures, all of which ultimately lead to the single goal of Lord Krishna Himself. Uddhava therefore desires that Lord Krishna state in simple terms what should be done. Arjuna made a similar request of the Lord at the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gita. So in Bhagavad-gita, same idea. Krishna is teaching the whole thing. He's a good guru. He's the best guru. He's teaching the whole path. So he teaches one thing and the other thing, and then people are like, whoa, which way should I go? What should I do now? So same thing happened with Arjuna, especially not only in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, but in the beginning of the 5th chapter in Bhagavad-gita. Arjuna is like, okay, whoa, you did a whole chapter on karma yoga, then you did a whole chapter on jnana yoga, and now I don't know, what do you want me to do? Is it karma or is it jnana? And then Krishna starts the 5th chapter of Bhagavad-gita saying, no, Arjuna, they're both the same thing. You have to have the jnana to be able to have the karma. You have to have the knowledge to be able to have the right action. And the right action comes from the right knowledge. So it's all the same thing, he says. Only a person with childish mentality, he uses this word, only a person with childish mentality would not understand this. He chastises his disciple like that. So you need both things. You need action, you need knowledge, you need devotion. That's why in the 3T path I emphasize the triple path of yoga. Anybody who's watched my introduction to Bhagavad-gita course or has read my works, is the triple path of yoga. You need knowledge, you need devotion, you need action, the behavior, the whole material side of life. So you need all of them. That's how yoga works. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Uddhava is stating here, my dear friend Krishna, first you recommended that I perform worldly activities within the Varnashrama system, and then you advised that I reject such activities and take to the path of philosophical research. Now, rejecting the path of jnana, you recommend that I simply surrender unto you in bhakti yoga. If I accept your decision in the future, you may again go back to your original point and recommend worldly activities. By his boldness in disclosing his mind, Uddhava reveals his intimate friendship with Lord Krishna. So very nice. Okay, so now Krishna is going to help his friend and disciple. Verse 17. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Uddhava, the Supreme Lord gives life to everything and is situated within the heart along with the life air and primal sound vibration. The Lord can be perceived in his subtle form within the heart by one's mind. Since the Lord controls the minds of everyone, even demigods like Lord Shiva, the Supreme Lord also assumes a gross form as the various sounds of the Vedas, composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations." So Krishna says, okay, look, let's take a step back here and see how I am everywhere, how I am easy to reach, how I am actually part of everything, and that's why there is action and philosophy and devotion. You can't miss me, Krishna is saying. But look, you can't miss me because I'm actually in the heart. This is a beautiful concept of the Vedic, corpus of the whole idea of devotion and spirituality in the Vedic view, Paramatma, God in the heart. Very beautiful, one of the big points emphasized by Krishna in Bhagavad-gita, so Krishna gives a whole chapter on it in Bhagavad-gita. It's a very beautiful, important concept that the Lord is situated within your heart, my heart, the heart of this planet, and every living creature. There are two presences in every living being, the soul and the super soul, the individual soul and the super soul, God. So it's a beautiful concept. So Krishna's right there in your heart, and thus you can perceive him in his subtle form, in his form in your heart, with your mind. And of course, that's what we're doing with yoga. That's what, devotees of all paths have always done. So they feel the presence of God and through different means of prayer, meditation, and whatever methods they use. But they perceive the Lord, through their minds. And now Krishna says an interesting thing. He says, actually, no, because Krishna controls everything. God controls everything. So I can control everyone's mind, even the mind of Lord Shiva. This is one of those verses where, because people get confused with Shiva, because there's a whole Shaivite tradition, but in the Bhagavad Purana, there's a clear hierarchy. Like, Shiva is not God and not the same as God. He's just like a little, he's a notch down. So there's this clear hierarchy that no, Shiva is something else. He's not the Supreme Lord. He's not like Krishna. He's not like Varaha. He's not like the other God avatars. He's a little different. He's something else. So don't get confused. So even Lord Shiva. And then he says, and then he connects now with the whole Vedic tradition, because remember there's the the Veda Samhitas, all the Vedic mantras and the chants, and there's this whole corpus. There's this huge, even to this day, this tradition that extends just, into like the unknown past of this Vedic mantras, and you have the Brahmanas who pass it on to their children, generation after generation. They're still doing that today. The kids will spend their school curriculum, a huge part is just mantras. It's just chanting mantras from the Rig Veda and from the Veda Samhitas, and they're just all these Vedic mantras, and they would do ceremonies and sacrifices. So this is whole huge thing of the Vedic corpus. So then he says, I'm also in the sounds of the Vedas, and composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations. So that is a physical manifestation as well or you can reach me through these sounds. So that's very interesting. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows on the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was bewildered and doubtful because Lord Krishna explained many different processes such as devotional service, speculative knowledge, renunciation, mystic yoga, austerities, pious duties, and so on. However, all of these processes are meant to help the living entities obtain the shelter of Lord Krishna. And ultimately, no Vedic process should be understood in any other way. So that's one of the messages of you get from Vedanta, from the Bhagavad Purana. It's like, okay, there's all these other things. And we talked about this in previous classes. So there's secondary and tertiary and all these other processes. And they're very nice, they're fine. They're not saying they're not good. But the point of them is to get to the primary goal. And the primary and ultimate goal is love of Krishna. In fact, Lord Krishna was surprised. Thus, Lord Krishna explained the entire Vedic system, placing everything in proper order. In fact, Lord Krishna was surprised that Uddhava foolishly thought that he was meant to practice every process, as if each method would meant simply for him. Lord Krishna therefore wants to inform his devotee, my dear Uddhava, when I told you that analytic knowledge is to be practiced, pious duties are to be performed, devotional service is obligatory, yoga procedures must be observed, austerities are to be executed, etc., I was instructing all living entities using you as my immediate audience. That which I have spoken, am speaking now, and will speak in the future should be understood as guidance for all living entities in different situations. How could you possibly think that you were meant to practice all of the different Vedic processes? I accept you as you are now, my pure devotee. You are not supposed to execute all of these processes. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, we've spoken about him, he's a wonderful spiritual master from the 17th century. Really, and this is like one of his traits, he really had this, it's like a very modern approach. He would take these verses and he would create these parallel dialogues. He would like reinterpret. He would, these dialogue, Krishna, what he was thinking, so he would have this view and just make it very accessible, these ideas. He's very modern approach, but 300 years ago, over 300 years ago, about 300 years ago. So he's a wonderful spiritual master. But so it's very funny, isn't it? He's like, come on, Uddhava. What's wrong with you? You don't think I didn't want you to do everything. You should just, I'm just explaining the whole thing, and you pick up where you are. So that helps. That's important for us to understand, because as we read Uddhava-gita, as you study Bhagavad-gita, sometimes there is a lot, and what to speak if you go further and you study like the whole Bhagavad Purana, you're reading Mahabharata or something, and then you hear all these things. And it can get confusing because it is a gigantic corpus, again, meant for all living entities, who are going to be in different moments, in different needs, in different processes of their spiritual evolution. So this applies, of course, to you as well. So, you got to focus on what I should do now, and I kind of, that's what I like to do. I like to help people just get onto the essential parts. That's when I did my 3T Path book, in my courses, give you okay, this is what topmost thing you need, and so you don't get lost in this huge ocean of thousands of years of civilization, of instructions. There is a specific thing we should be doing now, us here, the 21st century, what can we do now? So there's a specific thing now, and we shouldn't get lost in the whole thing. Thus, according to Srila Vishwanatharya, the Lord, with light-hearted and encouraging words, reveals to Uddhava the deep purpose behind the variety of Vedic procedures. Lord Krishna becomes manifest from the mouth of Lord Brahma in the form of the Vedas. The word Vivhara Prasuti in this verse also indicates that the Lord is manifest within the Adharadi chakras situated within the body of Lord Brahma. The word Goshena means subtle sound, and Guham Pravishta also indicates that Lord Krishna enters within the Adhara chakra. The Lord can further be perceived within other chakras, such as the Manipura chakra, located around the navel, and the Vishuddhi chakra. The Sanskrit alphabet is composed of short and long vowels and consonants pronounced with high and low tones, and utilizing these vibrations, the different branches of Vedic literatures are manifest as a gross form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Bhagavad-gita, such literatures deal mostly with the three modes of material nature. So these, of course, the Veda Samhitas, the general Vedic corpus, was what I call a mundane religion. So it's a religion of this world, of how to prosper in this world, in contact with the devas, the administrators of nature. It was more that kind of mundane focus, how to get a good crop, a family, health, victory, that kind of stuff, how to get favors, how to get cooperation from the administrators, the devas, the demigods. So that's what the Vedas. And then yoga is the spiritual transcendent process that is within the Vedas. So it's like going beyond this stuff. That's why both in Uddhava-gita, in Bhagavad Purana, Uddhava-gita, Bhagavad-gita, there's always this call like, okay, forget all that stuff, because now we have to go further. So don't worry about that stuff now. We're doing something else now. Spirituality is different from mundane, materialistic religion. This is something else. So there's always this, and in the European and of course in the Abrahamic, in the Western world, this change from one system to another was abrupt. So you had what now is called the pagan religion of Europe. So you had that whole, Greeks, the whole contact of Zeus, the whole thing, Thor, and for the Nordic peoples. So you had this, the mundane religion going on all over Europe, from the Nordic countries all the way down to Greece. So you had this, and of course the whole Roman Empire, North Africa, what's today's Turkey. So you had this whole thing going on, was basically, what we would call just like demigod religion, this mundane religion, right? You had all that going on, and then when Christianity went and spread throughout Europe, it came with the transcendental message of yoga, of bhakti, as it were, right? Of connection, of transcendence, of going beyond the world. So like rejecting matter and seeking God. So it came with that message, which is part of the message of Bhagavad-gita and Uddhava-gita, etc. Part of the, but it came as a different thing. So it came as like, okay, forget all that other stuff. This is something else. What you guys are doing here, pagans, this is something else. This is bad. This is evil. You have to just stop that immediately. Throw that away. Forget all that stuff. So it was like a more brutal wiping clean of what people were doing before. Interesting that in Southeast Asia, in the Vedic, civilization, as it were, you have both going on at the same time. It's okay. It's like, okay, there's this thing, and now we're teaching something higher. So if you're ready for something higher, here it is. But if you're not, then you should stick with the other thing, which is kind of nice, because not everybody's ready for spirituality, as we can clearly see. I can give you that testimony, having spent, over 30 years, 30 years now trying to teach spirituality. Not many people are into it. I mean, just look at this channel, how many views and subscribers we have, and then go to like some other mundane channel and, like talking about silly things, and they have like 1 million times more. So not many people are into spirituality. So by rejecting like the mundane religion, which is more dear to people, they can understand, they can relate to that more, you kind of like end up having an atheistic, you know, like you lose the guiding light that these, because, you know, people have different processes at different moments. So if you throw it away and say, no, only the top thing, and then people who aren't ready for the top thing, they're left, you know, unguided. They're just left lost. And that's what you have in this, you know, how the world kind of went into that direction. Kind of like they lost that nice religion connection to like their material goals is what they have in mind. And so then they're just, you know, there's nothing to guide them. So it's interesting that's this difference between the Vedic, you know, demigod worship and transcendence versus what happened in the Western world. Okay, now, according to Bhagavad-gita, such literatures deal mostly with the three modes of material nature, Trigunya, Vishaya Veda, and Ishtrigunya Bhavardhana. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that due to the control of the illusory energy Maya, the personality of Godhead appears to the conditioned souls as part of the material universe. The imagined imposition of gross and subtle material qualities on the personality of Godhead is called avidya, or ignorance. And through such ignorance, the living entity considers himself to be the doer of his own activities and becomes bound up in the network of karma. So now this is Srila Sridhar Swami, who's the earliest commentator we have available of the Bhagavad Purana. So this is going way back, about 800, 900 years. Excuse me. And so he's commenting on how what people do is they think God is just in matter. They become mundane, mundane consciousness. And in that mundane consciousness, of course, you get stuck in the process of karma, in the laws of karma. You identify with your action, you're expecting the result in the future, and then you just caught up as a karmi, as a regular materialist. The Vedas therefore ordered an entangled soul, stuck in the laws of karma, to observe positive and negative injunctions to purify his existence. So that's what I was talking about. So in the mundane system, okay, you're all religious, you're all mundane, you're just interested in materialistic things, all you care about is having fun, wealth, victory, wife, children, health. Well, okay, so, but then there's a system for that. There's a system to take that person and at least purify his action, give him some boundaries, give him some direction, and hint at superior states of consciousness. That's the beauty of the Vedic tradition, of the Vedic corpus. So there's that, it accommodates that level of totally material consciousness, but with just a hint of like, look, there's something else. And again, what happened in Europe is that by rejecting that materialistic thing, then people are like, okay, it's either all out transcendence, love of God, or you, what? I've got nothing, you just lost to yourself. So then there's nothing to guide the person and help him on the path. These procedures are called pavriti marga, or the path of regulated fruitive activities, regulated karma, pavriti marga. When one has purified one's existence, one gives up this gross stage of fruitive activities because it is detrimental to the practice of pure devotional service. By firm faith, one may then worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who has developed perfect Krishna consciousness no longer has to perform ritualistic duties, as stated in Bhagavad-gita, tasya karyam navidyate. So the idea is, okay, so there's all these, materialistic rituals you have to perform, things you have to do on the materialistic platform just to elevate your mind, push you towards transcendence. But once you are in the path of yoga, you are practicing, then you don't need that stuff anymore. You see, that's how it works. You need both. Both systems are there to guide people in the right direction. according to Srila Jiva Goswami. This verse, Jiva Goswami is a spiritual master from the medieval times, about 400 years ago. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this verse may be understood in another way. The word Jiva indicates Lord Krishna, who gives life to the residents of Vrindavan. And Vivara Prasuti indicates that although Lord Krishna eternally performs his pastimes in the spiritual world beyond the vision of the conditioned souls, he also enters within the material universe to display these same pastimes. The word Guham Pravishta indicates that after displaying such pastimes, the Lord withdraws them and enters into his unmanifest pastimes, or those pastimes not manifest to the conditioned souls. In this case, Matra indicates the transcendental senses of the Lord, Swara indicates the Lord's transcendental sound vibration and singing, and the word Varna indicates the transcendental form of the Lord. The word stavishta, or gross manifestation, means that the Lord becomes manifest in the material world even to those devotees who are not completely advanced in Krishna consciousness and whose vision is not completely purified. Manomaya indicates that somehow or other Lord Krishna is to be kept within one's mind, and for the non-devotees Lord Krishna is shukshma, or most subtle, because he cannot be known. Thus, different acharyas have glorified Lord Krishna in different ways through the transcendental sound vibration of this verse. So this is a wonderful view of just how brilliant this commentarial tradition is. And here, of course, Jiva Goswami went way esoteric in his interpretation of the verse, talking about Lord coming to the world, how Krishna came to the earth and his Nara Leela and manifests his presence, but then he left again, but then you can see him. There's wonderful ways to meditate on Lord Krishna with these verses. All right, so that's it for now. We'll stop here. Very deep, interesting topics, and I hope you managed to get some of that for your benefit, and have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.